There are just three more podcast episodes until the end of 2024. And so I thought it would be quite nice to kind of wrap up this year by creating a bit of a mini series where I'm going to be sharing with you the mistakes that I have made this year and what I have learnt from them, the wins that I've had in 2024, and the kind of experiences that I've gleaned from those moments. And also, I'm going to be sharing with you the goals that I have set myself for 2025 and how I approach this whole new year phase. So that's what you can look forward to over the next couple of weeks. But let's begin today, shall we, with the mistakes that I have made in 2024 and the big lessons that I have learnt from them. Now, if you are a regular of this podcast, then you will already be familiar with the fact that I have been following the 12-week year principle this year. If you are brand new and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go back to episode number 5, Rethinking Your 2024. And I talk about this whole 12-week year principle in that episode. But in summary, for the purpose of today, the 12-week year principle is the fact that you divide your year into a series of 4 3-month segments. And each 3-month segment is the equivalent of a complete year. So the whole traditional notion of a year being made up of 12 months completely changes with this concept. And the idea is that for every 3-month segment, you will set yourself new goals, you will evaluate and track your progress, and you basically close each 3-month segment off as if you were closing a complete year. And, it's quite an incredible concept. I have to be honest, I've achieved some incredible things this year on the back of using this principle, which I'll be talking about in next week's episode. But it has also highlighted for me some of the mistakes that I have been making this year. And the first mistake is that I've been wasting a lot of time on things that I'm not in alignment with. So, for my first 12-week year, so from January through to March, I set myself a goal of creating a digital travel guide for Palermo. Now, I had the idea this year to start to create digital products because I wanted to be able to serve people in different ways outside of my YouTube channel and website and social platforms. And I thought, living here in Palermo, I've got the best of both worlds. I'm living in a very popular tourist destination. I get to see where the locals go and, the best places to eat and avoiding all the typical tourist traps. And so I thought it would be really good to help people to have a more authentic holiday when they come here. However, I really struggled to get going with this project. And it really felt like I was efforting. I managed to make some progress. I created a Google map of like all the places that I wanted to talk about. I started to create like walk-in tours, but it was really difficult. It did not come easily. And I kind of came to the end of that first 12-week year segment with not much done. And I realized that I had to pause that idea because in my second 12-week segment, I decided that I wanted to go back to Salerno and I booked a trip there. And I wanted to create a digital travel guide for Salerno. And I went back to Salerno and I captured some up-to-date content and I created that digital product easily and effortlessly in a matter of weeks after I came back from that trip. And it is now available to buy. I will put the link below in the show notes if you want to go and have a look. And, I realized then and there that I was never meant to create the digital travel guide for Palermo at that point, if at all. Like Salerno came so naturally to me that I realized it was always meant to be the first travel guide that I created. I guess, the fact I lived there for 4 years really helped because I really got to know that city very well because it's not a big city at all. And, it just came so naturally that I realized that I just wasn't meant to focus on the travel guide for Palermo at all. And so that whole experience made me realize that when something just feels difficult, you cannot get into the flow. Don't push through, stop and pivot and do something different instead. Like I am meticulous with my time. I time block every single hour because I realize how important time is and how precious it is as a commodity. Like, we always say, oh, I don't have enough time to do something. Well, the reality is we're just not using our time in the best way. Now, I have realized though that even though I time block and I set myself specific tasks at specific hours, sometimes I just cannot get into the flow of the task that I have set myself for that period. And it just feels like I'm efforting, like it just feels heavy. It doesn't feel effortless. And I have learned now that, you have to stop and you have to do something different instead. Because if you decide to push through, it will take you 10 times longer than it would normally if you were in flow and in alignment with what you were doing. And also, it's not necessarily going to be your best work. If you allow yourself to pivot and come back to that later on, if you are even meant to at all, you will find that it will be so much easier to do at that point. And also, you will make much better progress too. So, that has been a really, really big lesson that I have learned this year. Like, whenever something just feels heavy and I cannot get into the flow, that is the time when I need to just move on and do something different. And if I'm meant to revisit that project again in the future, I will. And if not, then it's not meant to be. You have to listen to yourself more, because I really wasted the first 3 months of this year not doing so. So make sure that you're always in alignment with everything that you do. The second mistake that I made in 2024 was that I let unimportant things bother me. Now, this is something that I'm continuously working on trying to improve, because I realize that I'm quite a sensitive person. I absorb people's energy, I absorb the energy of places. And so sometimes when people are not behaving in their best way, or there's a lack of something, for example, communication, it really bothers me. But I've come to learn that, you cannot let every single little thing in life bother you, because life is always going to be complicated. There are always going to be imperfect people and imperfect situations, but you just have to go with the flow more, because if you allow every single thing to upset you, you're just going to feel rubbish at the end of the day. And I realized that there were a lot of things that I have no control over. And so I have to just let them be. And this is what I was talking about in my previous episode, number 51, if you want to go back and have a look. But I was talking about this book that I want to start reading in 2025 by Mel Robbins, called Let Them, which really embraces this principle of just letting go of the things that you have no control over, rather than letting them kind of emotionally and physically impact you instead. And this has been a really, really big thing for me. And even linking it back to that previous podcast episode, number 51, I spoke about a book that I read at the very beginning of this year by Ali Abdul, Feel Good Productivity. And he talks about this as well, like really asking yourself, how much is this going to affect you in like a matter of weeks, months, or years? Like, and it's so interesting how many things in the moment that we feel really consumed and stressed by are probably going to have very little impact on us in our future. So this is definitely something that I am continuously working on, but I am learning to just let unimportant things go and not let them consume me and bother me. I really am starting to learn more about the things that are valuable in life, and the things that are worth your time and attention, and also the things that are not, and the things that you just need to let go and let them be. And this has been a really big lesson for me this year. The third mistake that I made this year was that I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things done. Now, tied into everything that I've spoken about already, the time blocking, the 12-week year principle, I really put a lot of pressure on myself to perform on social media, to have a set number of videos produced for YouTube, to have an active Instagram account. And as such, at the beginning part of this year, I struggled a bit to get into that routine. I'm definitely there now with my YouTube. I'm definitely a lot better now. I'm a lot more consistent than I've ever been before. But my Instagram has not really been the case this year. I'm starting to get better, but I'm not quite there yet. And I realized that I was just putting too much pressure on myself. When you try to be everything to everyone, you are nothing to no one. And this is the key, really. Trying to be excellent on every single social platform takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. And sometimes it can be too much for one person to really be an expert in all fields. I really kind of narrowed my focus a lot more on to YouTube this year. And as a result, I've seen some great progress on that platform. And now I'm kind of allowing myself to open up to the possibility of learning more about Instagram, because I feel like I am confident with YouTube now. I understand how it works. I understand what I'm doing. And, now I feel like I'm ready and open to learning more about Instagram and trying to improve my presence there. But you see, at the beginning of this year, I wasn't in that place, and I was putting far too much pressure on myself to try to perform well on every single platform when that just wasn't going to be the case. So I think we have to be a lot kinder to ourselves, and we have to realize that, we are human and we can only absorb so much information at any given time. So it's not about trying to kind of treat ourselves as if we're robots. We do have limitations, and we have to respect that. And we have to realize that, if we want to do well at something, it's going to take time, and we have to perhaps master what we already know first before trying to learn something new. Because it really is that thing, when you divide yourself into too many directions, you end up achieving not a lot of anything. So you really do have to be quite focused with what you do. The fourth mistake that I really made this year was that I was quite hard on myself at certain points throughout this year. So I naturally find it quite difficult to relax. I naturally find it difficult to switch off and do nothing. I'm so wired to always be doing something. I wake up early every day. I'm working whenever I have a free moment. It's very difficult for me to be like, okay, I'm not going to do a thing. Now, I have realized now, sitting here in December, that it is extremely important to be able to do that. And I feel that I have slowly got better at it as the year has gone on. But at the beginning of this year, especially, I was very, very hard on myself. Whenever I had a day where I couldn't focus and I just couldn't get into the flow of my work, I would literally make myself feel rubbish at the end of that day and be like, well, you've wasted an entire day, Claire. Like, this time is precious. Why didn't you work harder? Why didn't you get into the flow? It's all an excuse. But this kind of comes around full circle moment, really, to what I was talking about as my first mistake of 2024. It's the sense that you have to be in alignment with things for them to be easy. And if they're not easy, you're not going to do them. And it's not to say that everything in life is going to be easy to do. Of course, it isn't. But if there is a sense of alignment, it does feel easier compared to when there isn't. And I have realized that, it is important for me to rest. Over the summer, when I really truly switched off for the first time in a long time, I became my most productive and creative. And I realized then in that moment, it was like the light bulb went off, that in order for me to perform better, I have to take periods of rest. I have to switch off. I have to batch create my content so that I don't have to constantly be thinking of new ideas and material that I need to produce. I have to look after myself in this way. And in turn, it will help me to look after my own creativity and products that I'm kind of working on. So I am really, really grateful for this mistake this year, because it has really made me realize that you must take time to stop, because in stillness is when you actually become your best person, because you realize things that perhaps when you were constantly hustling, you didn't realize. You come up with ideas because your brain is still and has the time to think and process. And also, you just feel rested. Like, I've had a few moments this year where I felt really tired and exhausted. And it's not a good feeling, because you really are not in a creative space when you're feeling like that. So, this has been a big mistake of mine, but it has also helped me to learn one of the biggest lessons this year that I have learned. Taking time to rest is not wasted time. In fact, it's one of the best ways that you possibly could use the time that you have available for yourself. I will see you in the next episode.